I now give the floor to the Speaker of Sri Lanka, followed by Australia and the United States.
Thank you, Madam President. Sri Lanka aligns itself with the statements delivered by Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement and Iraq on behalf of the Group of 77 and China, and wishes to make the following remarks in its national capacity. Sri Lanka remains deeply concerned by the continued imposition of unilateral coercive measures against Cuba for over 6 decades, which run counter to the principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations and the norms of international law. It is evident that the unilateral actions imposed on Cuba had negative consequences for the well-being of the civilians and for the economic and social development of the country. In this context, Sri Lanka voted in favor of the resolution A/80/L.C titled Necessity of Ending the Economic, Commercial, and Financial Embargo imposed by the United States of America against Cuba, along with 164 other countries. Madam President, Sri Lanka is concerned by the barriers created by this embargo, particularly in the area of procurement of medical supplies, vaccines, and essential equipment, especially during health emergencies. The humanitarian consequences of such restrictions are unacceptable. Access to healthcare must not be politicized or constrained by extraterritorial economic measures. We also noted the impacts of the embargo on the food and agriculture sector in Cuba. The economic sanctions on Cuba prevent its acquisition of fertilizers, machinery, fuel, and advanced technology, resulting in a significant decrease in food production. Such obstructions to progress in the agriculture sector in Cuba have a direct impact on its effort to reach food security in the country. Unfortunately, the most vulnerable segment in these situations is women and children. At a time when the world is collectively taking action to end global hunger, we should not use sanctions to promote hunger in another country. Madam President, we believe the time has come to lift this embargo. There is no doubt that this embargo hinders Cuba's pathway to sustainable development, violates fundamental human rights of Cuban citizens. The blockade had incurred billions of losses to the Cuban economy. Regardless of the intention of the embargo, the reality is clear. It is ordinary citizens who suffer the most. Therefore, Cubans should get equal opportunities as people in other nations. Their right to health, right to food, and the right to education have to be respected. Free flow of trade should be allowed. Humanity over hatred should prevail. Sri Lanka has continuously supported the adoption of this resolution over the years. We reiterated that obligations set forth in the UN Charter should be addressed with urgency. I thank you.
I thank the Speaker of Sri Lanka. I now give the floor to the Speaker of Australia, followed by the United States and Nicaragua.
Thank you, President. I speak on behalf of Australia and New Zealand. We voted in support of this annual resolution concerning the embargo against Cuba because the embargo restricts open trade and investment. This vote does not reflect an endorsement of the policies of Cuba, including widespread reports of failures to comply with international human rights standards, expropriation of property, misinformation and disinformation, and Cuban nationals fighting as part of Russia's illegal and immoral invasion of Ukraine. Australia and New Zealand remain concerned by the human rights situation in Cuba, which has continued to deteriorate following the Cuban government's heavy-handed response to peaceful protests in 2021 and ongoing restrictions on the freedom of expression and association affecting everyday Cubans. We take this opportunity to urge the Cuban government to respect the rights of all its population and call for the release of all political prisoners and those who are arbitrarily detained. Thank you, President.
I thank the Speaker of Australia. I now give the floor to the Speaker of the United States, followed by Nicaragua and Israel.
Madam President, colleagues,